All right. All right, all right. Good evening, family, and welcome to the True Love Movement. All right, all right. All right, all right. Greetings, family, and good evening, and welcome to the True Love Movement Tuesdays. It's Brother Shaq. We got Mama Fire on the other side of the glass. We need to turn your mic up, Mama Fire, so we can hear you too. That's the yellow. And so we are a little bit delayed here today as we were preparing to, get the boards all situated. We got Mama Fire on the other side of the glass handling the business. We still can't hear you, Mama. That's the yellow. We do appreciate you being patient, family. We know there was a rerun playing from last week's show, which was a great show. Again, our second True Love Movement Tuesdays here. Back was last week, and now we're on our third. So we thank you all for joining us on the ride home or on the way in, or wherever you are traveling to. There's so many things happening here in New Orleans, and we're honored that you have chosen to ride with us for the next couple of hours.
Yes. How you doing today, Brother Shay?
You know, Mama Fire, I'm good. I'm real good. As a matter of fact, hold on to this, and let me get you together.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure we realize that this is a live show here at True Love Movement, True Love Movement Tuesdays on WBOK 12:30 a.m. And today's date is April 30th, Tuesday, April 30th, 2019. And so we are here at WBOK 12:30 a.m. for True Love Movement Tuesdays. We also are on Facebook Live right now, so shout out to our Facebook Live family. How y'all doing today? We're just getting set up and balanced up in the studio right now, but we have a beautiful show for you all. And I just was listening to the rebroadcast from last week's show when we were talking about what manifest, Brother Shay.
Right on, keep
It's coming up. And I want to let everybody know that we have decided to utilize a Black-owned company for our online tickets. We want to use a Black-owned company because we want to see our people grow. We want to see them prosper. We want to see us be able to handle up on our own business, whatever it is we need to be able to provide that for each other. So I did a little research and found that there is a Black-owned online ticket company, kind of like the other ticket companies that we use all the time, and it's called Scievent, and it's SIEVENT. Now that is just www.scievent.com. And you can go in there and either search for Runaway Girl, but the actual website, if you want to go straight to the Runaway Girl, the stage play tickets, it's www.run-away-girl.scievent.com. And even if you're doing an event anytime soon, I know why. If you're doing an event anytime soon, you could use Scievent. It's our people. And listen, this is an up and running company, so we're going to be patient with our people, right, Brother Shay?
Right on, Mama Fire. I like that you were able to locate them and, and then work through whatever the kinks were with getting it, with getting things up to speed that way, because we know that is sometimes some of the challenges, as Black-owned businesses and startups and what have you, having a limited number of resources or amount of resources, or folks to work to man the phones and do the kind of thing like what we're doing today.
Yeah, we're doing it all, man.
We're doing it all, and that's what it takes. We are the most creative and imaginative people, and so I'm glad that you did find that company, and I'm excited to do some work with them.
Definitely.
And also hope that more of our people will have a good experience and do it as well.
Yes, spread it around.
Right on.
Yeah, and so we're getting ready to talk. We have a packed show for you today.
We always got a jam-packed show for your family.
Yes, yes. Today, April 30th, the last day of April.
The last day of April.
Man, 2019 is going by fast, Brother Shay.
I know. I've been looking at that vision board, Mama Fire. We're checking some things off there.
Come on.
Already, we're just 4 months done, and that's exciting.
Very.
So that we still have about another 6 or so months to check off some things, and also add some things to the vision board. I hope folks who are listening, who are also looking at your vision boards and monitoring your progress and being honest with yourself about where you are and doing the things that you need to do to be in line with what you said that you do this year, the things that you visioned. And it is our hope that those visions are in fact becoming real for you.
Yes.
I see your phone.
Sure.
So today's topic, Mama Fire, we didn't do a meme this time. We didn't promote it or advertise it, but it's a good one, and it was your idea. What's today's topic, Mama?
Today's topic is Sweetest Taboo.
Sweetest Taboo.
Yeah, you know that
like
song,
the Shorty
right?
record.
Yes.
Sweetest Taboo. I like the little drum part of it. I like that.
Oh, you like that? Yeah, you like to play that on several
Yeah.
different kind of instruments.
Yeah.
So yes,
Sweetest
and
Taboo.
and the idea behind it was that if we begin talking about the things that are said to be taboo,
Mm-hmm.
that we'll be able to push through and work through, the pain to get to the sweetest of joy.
Right.
Where we can talk about the things and have difficult conversations. Listen, in order to be able to have difficult conversations, talking about the things that are taboo,
Mm-hmm.
then we can move mountains, in our own
Right.
families. But first, we got to be able to do that for ourselves.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And so, are you suggesting that as our people, those who are politically designated as black, you saying we have a lot of taboo subjects?
Oh, come
Difficult.
on. The whole of America has many taboo subjects. The world. It's been under the rule of religion and the
Right.
philosophies of religion. And look, my people, wherever you are on that journey is all good, but there's a lot of taboo things, even in African traditional religions, that's taboo.
Right.
And so, and you're supposed to, you better not do this or you better not say
Right.
this. And sometimes those things need to be said.
Definitely. I mean, I think about the way we're taught to keep certain things. Talk about what happens in this house stays in this house.
Yes, exactly.
Those kinds of things. And then is it that our people don't want to have difficult conversations, Mama Fire, or is it that we don't necessarily feel equipped to have the difficult conversations, and we would rather, defer to the superficial, transactional kind of conflict? What is it?
That's the same thing. I think that we don't want to because they're very uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to because we're taught not to talk about those things, and we're not skilled enough to actually do it. And I think that's what counseling and coaching is all about.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about having the audacity to have the difficult conversations that nobody's willing to have.
Right.
I mean, so many times when people ask me for a family session,
Mm-hmm.
a family session, we do those.
That's right.
And we can have some beautiful breakthrough moments. But the reason why we're not having those by ourselves and we need support or mediator or neutral party or whatever is
Mm-hmm.
because we're not willing to say, this happened.
Right.
Remember, this happened, or did it happen to you, or whatever the case may be. We don't do it, and it does take skill though.
Right. And it also takes time.
Yes.
It takes time, and these conversations are generally very, very messy.
Yes, they are.
And I don't mean messy like, just antagonistic, but not neat in the ways that we've grown accustomed to desiring things. I mean, when we think historically about our experience here in America, that hasn't been a very neat thing. Being dehumanized and being violated is not a neat kind of a thing. But when it comes to moving through those things, or people be saying, getting past certain things, we do put some demands, I think, on that how that shows up or how that's presented, and I think we have a sense that this is going to be difficult or this is going to be ugly or whatever the case is, and I don't think we like to venture very much into that, but there's also a cost for that ignorance, that ignorance. There ends up being a cost for that, right, Mama Five?
Oh, definitely. And the cost is we can't move past anything if we're not able to face it.
Right.
We're not able to look at it. Um, and so, Brother Shaq, we are always broaching taboo subjects on WBOK 1230 AM.
Oh,
Part
yeah.
of what we do as the True Love Movement Hour is just bring this stuff up that people say we shouldn't talk about.
Right.
And part of that is being black.
Yes.
I think, quote unquote black. We've
Right.
learned how to say politically designated as black, but for all better, for all appropriate terms, I mean, that's what we know we are. That's what we've known we are for a long time.
Yes,
Ever
sir.
since I've been, in this world, I know we were called colored and Negroes and all kind of other things.
Right.
But black has been what we've been for the last 40 years.
Right.
And so I think people still get kind of tense when you say black, when you say the word black, or we black people, or our black people, or something like that. People, you can feel the room tensing up, or even, man, people still point at their hand when they're talking about black people.
And they point at the inside of their hand when they're talking about white people.
Oh, they do, not me.
Yeah,
I ain't never seen
no,
that.
not you, not me, but I'm just saying I've heard them say, they'll do this, and point at like the back
really?
of their
I've never
hand,
seen that.
and that indicates us. And then they turn their hand over and they say, those people.
Oh, really? Well, I've never seen that in particular, but I have seen recently.
Right.
And I thought this was the thing of the past, that we can say black with pride. We can say black people, our people, whatever, but we say, people that look like us.
Right.
Kind of thing. It's kind of like code. You don't say black. And then saying black and white in the same sentence. Oh, you bringing up race. And oh, you starting mess. Or oh, you doing this and that.
Right.
But it's time that we have very clear, concise, conversations about what's going on with us, about racism.
Right. And about race. And I think, that is the always the pink elephant, quote unquote, the proverbial pink elephant in the room is, and we're gonna leave this way now because that's the obvious thing, and so many times we're looking for something, we're looking for it to be something else, and then I'm gonna say something that may sound off-putting to some, and that's okay. That's not really what this is about. This could be taboo. But I think that there isn't a problem, a so-called problem, that the collective of black folks, as well as individual black folks, but the collective of black folks, there isn't a problem, a single problem that we're faced with or struggling with in 2019 that isn't a direct result or an indirect result of racism. There isn't not one quote-unquote problem or challenge that those who are politically designated as black in America are grappling with that isn't directly or indirectly related to racism. Not one. And that it almost sounds like an oversimplification, but really it isn't. And in fact, what it does do is I think it opens up the idea of, well, what does that mean? Like, how could everything be about racism? And then even the aversion to, as you just mentioned, people talking about race and racism and black and white and not saying it, as though if we don't say it, it isn't affecting us. And I think we know all too well that it is affecting us.
Yes.
And oftentimes too, we know that what people will point out are aspects of byproducts or manifestations of the racism. They'll talk about colorism, like we were just part of another panel, another round of that, where folks were talking about colorism.
Yes, and I'm tired of the panel discussions. Let me just say that might be taboo to say.
That might be taboo. I like it.
But I'm tired of it just because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't change anything. Now, if it was in front of maybe a younger group of people, but it's always like we're saying the same things to the same people.
Sure.
And what they call quote unquote preaching to the choir.
Right,
it's like
right.
if it's not moving anything, then it's wasting time. You know, I think. I mean, colorism. It's easier to talk about colorism,
right?
Which is the truth.
Go at racism.
And really dig into how racism has impacted us.
Right.
It's easier to say, yeah, you know, we do this to each other, and light skin, dark skin, and all these things. But it's easier to say light skin, dark skin, than it is to say black.
Right.
You know, and
Right.
and maybe there's an aversion to the term black. Maybe
Sure.
there is, and I understand that. Our brother Emil Labat, you know,
Right.
talks about black being not a good terminology to call ourselves because of be lack. You know,
Right.
the brother was brilliant.
That's
you know,
right.
Rising Power King.
Rising Power.
He was brilliant in many ways to look at things a little differently. And how maybe the energy of a word is keeping us back, but we know it's not just the energy of the word, right? Keeping us back, and it galvanizes us. Black galvanizes us. It galvanizes us even in South America, in the Caribbean islands, and you know different places around the world are either Afro Latina or Afro Caribbean or black, simply black. And I think until we define it for ourselves, this is what we have.
Right. Well, that might be the most taboo aspect of that, is that we didn't define ourselves for ourselves in terms of this political construct that someone imposed the color, the name on us, which is a color categorization, as opposed to an actual race, which race is not even a real thing. It's a species classification.
Yes.
And so, you know, even talking about those things, but I'm glad you said that. The taboo that I found in that, though, is that even in those points, many times folks will want to divert from that and talk about, well, no, I'm not black, I am a Moor. I am, you know, and so it's those kinds of things, and once we start arguing about what to call ourselves, we've gotten all the way away from race.
Yes, we have.
And we've gotten a little bit heated because, you know, we say, well, don't call me that because I'm not that, and, you know, all of those kinds of things, which are intended to be confusing, which are intended to be divisive.
Yes.
And so I think we can certainly agree that, you know, those of us who are politically designated as black in this racist, white supremacist, social construct, ideological construct in America, did not at any point in time of history define ourselves this way. We did not do that, so this isn't ours. Now we can throw it away, but then we're trying to figure out, well, then what do I call myself? And the real thing is, how do systems and institutions who are imposing themselves upon me, how do they see me? Because I can call myself anything. As a matter of fact, you don't know this, but I was doing a training, a workshop, an undoing racism training, and there was a brother who came later, and the brother, you know, was asked to introduce himself, and he did, and then, you know, we were asking him things, and he says, well, I don't see myself as black. I don't call myself black. I'm a scientist. I'm a philosopher. That's who I am.
Wow. Okay.
And I definitely can concur and agree with that. I didn't take anything away from what he was saying, because he was self-defining himself. That's the way he defined himself. But what we had to ask him was, well, who are you when the police show up?
Come on.
Will they recognize a scientist and a philosopher when they see you? I know who you see, and I see him too. But who are they going to see? And the reason why they matter is because we're talking about a power arrangement. And so in this racist construct, black folks have been identified by the dominant culture. This is what they call it. So we can say that we're all kinds of things. Since it's a political designation, there's a certain policy that governs how these systems and institutions interact with us. And it's going to be the black policy, not the scientist and philosopher
Yeah.
policy, so.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that. And I think what I've decided is to utilize black, especially as an uppercase with an uppercase B.
Right.
Just because that's the name of something,
Yeah,
like it's the
yeah.
name of something, it's not the color. And so I've been taught to capitalize
Right.
the B in black as not the thing, but the name of a thing.
Right, right.
And we're not things, of course. We're a mighty nation of people, of brilliant, wonderful people. So that's just the thing that connects us, the word I use to connect us. But then personally, I utilize native and indigenous.
Indigenous.
Those things are important to me. That's
Right.
where I stand. If I fill out any paperwork, that's what I put.
Right.
I don't know what the police would think. I mean, I don't care, but I'm
Right.
just saying,
Right.
probably black.
Right.
Because that's a political designation. Brother
Right.
Shay, can you break that down a little bit, like political designation? Just a couple of minutes on that.
Sure. So when something is, everything is political, but when political deals with a policy, and P-O-L-I, it beyond just many, it also regards city. It's Greek in origin, the P-O-L-I, and then over time in America, and I don't remember right now because I did the research on when it actually became, when it moved from being a P-O-L-I or P-O-L-I-S, like the metropolises, those are cities, and P-O-L-I-S, police, when it became a policy, and a policy became a rule or a law. That did happen over time in America. And so the orientation to the word policy now is that of a rule and a law. And in this particular construct, in the social construct in America, as one president said, and I can't call who it is now, that I'm quoting him and I'm paraphrasing also, we are not a nation of men, we are a nation of laws. And what that signaled in terms of they talk about the tone of the spirit or the letter of the law, that signaled that these are things that people are governed by policy. And that since policies are laws, and they're unnatural laws, they're not natural laws, they're made by lawmakers, which are people, who essentially vote and agree and ratify and all whatever those processes are. Once those things become quote unquote law, they require enforcement, which is where police come in, policy enforcers. And so when black is a political designation, white is also a political designation, brown is even a political designation, but black and white are the most polarized because of the history and the founding and the forming of this nation in its current iteration. So the political designation simply means that when someone is black, they have a relationship to systems and institutions in America. And when someone is white, they have a relationship to systems and institutions. And those systems and institutions that are sanctioned by the state are set up by those who have come to be called white for the benefit of those who have come to be called white. And therefore they have the closest proximity and all access to the gathered individual and collective power of all systems and institutions. And those who are black, brown, or otherwise anything other than white do not have such access.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank
you for breaking it all the way down. And so today we're talking about taboo. We're calling it the Sweetest Taboo, thinking if we do bring up these subjects with ourselves and our families and people we have influence and access to, that maybe we can understand what joy it is, and like moving some things out of the way to have some sweetness in our lives. And the way I came up with it is just because that's what happened for me. You know, I had to say the things, Brother Shaq. I felt like I was just maybe stuck. You know, stuck feeling like I couldn't say anything to anybody. Um, and because if I did, I was looked at as, you know, in shock. Like,
Right.
we can't believe she's talking about this right now. And so that alienated me and made me feel isolated from everybody. And so
Right.
I was stuck in that. I know I'm having these thoughts. I know that this happened, but I can't talk about it. And so imagine how young people feel. You know, imagine how they feel
Well, we know.
to learn. Shh, you can't say that. Like,
Right.
don't say that to anyone. Don't say that around anybody. Don't say that around white people. Don't say that around black people. Like,
Right.
to be told what you can't say, and then we get into this idea of political correctness
Right.
as well that everybody's talking about now.
Or policing, which is what you're saying. Like, someone tells you
Yes.
by virtue of a policy they're enforcing on you, you don't do that. You don't say that now. We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And it happens, you know, and then they really do shh or whatever the case is to really control what you're saying, to invalidate your experience. Or, you know, when you even said just now about shh, we don't talk about that. We don't what we don't talk about is why that happened. We deal with the person and say that there's some kind of a troublemaker or they're whatever for speaking about these things, but we don't talk about the things that happened to them that have caused them to respond that way. We don't even broach that subject.
Yeah,
You
it's
know,
true.
that's kind of taboo to talk about it that way. That we don't look at the origin of the behavior. We just look at the fact that the behavior exists and we say, well, stop that.
Yeah, I mean, I think we see that now. I mean, we see that all the time. But now with the parents and what parents can wear to the school and the dress code for the parents and all these things. And,
Policy.
Yep. And created policies specifically, it seems like, for black parents and black schools, because we don't hear it anywhere else. And so you get two sides of it. You know, one side that says, now you should know better than that to walk out of the house and dress that way. And then you hear other people saying, well, why y'all telling people how to dress? Isn't this about educating children? And no one really is looking at the source of the, or why someone would dress that way, you know, ever, you know, outside of the house. But, you know, I mean, not even putting any judgment on it, because I'm not about to tell anybody what they can and cannot wear. No. I'm not about to do it. I mean, that's too much, you know, power on my part on somebody else's life and their own choices. You know, I like to wear what I like. And you know, you wear what you like, and there's this standard that is a white standard.
That's
Truly,
right.
It's a white standard that says you go to the school dressed like this and this and this. You know what I'm saying? This is how you go to the school for your child. And so I just, you can see the taboo in that. You can see all the taboo wrapped up, like, you don't really tell someone in their face. You set a policy.
Right.
You put a policy up on the door as people walk in so they can read it. You don't say, sis, are you okay? Is everything okay? Is anything going on? Or is it, you know, we don't connect and have that difficult conversation. We just put a policy up and then talk about people behind their back.
Right. And that is, man, there's so much in there, Mama Fi, that you just said. And it makes me think about, you know, Mama Barbara Major and her conceptualizing the internalized racial oppression and the internalized racial inferiority and the manifestations of that, because there were so many manifestations inside of that, that scenario you just described, and one of which isn't really regarded initially that way, is that when someone does that, that is exaggerated visibility. In other words, we know, and I've learned, and I think everyone knows by now, but I remember being a teenager, a young teenager, hearing people talk about how a young sister was dressed, you know, walking on the street, and, you know, some banter from some of the older men and some of the older women were saying, you know, and what they were essentially saying was that, you know, she ain't had no business kind of like this, had no business wearing that out here. And
nobody pulled them over to the side and had a conversation about why.
Well, the older men was looking at it, and their thought was like, look, I mean, you know, if she didn't want nobody to look, she wouldn't have put that on, because, you know what I'm saying? So she must want that kind of attention. And so it kind of just stopped right there. And then what I've learned, you know, through the years, and again through Mama Barbara Major with her conceptualization of internalized racial inferiority and the manifestation of exaggerated visibility, is that to the extent that we feel dehumanized as people, we will do things to make sure that we're seen, because what racism does for us is it invisibilizes us. It collectivizes us first, and then they put a policy on us, and then it really, you know, one thing that black people, or two things that black people, the politically designated as black people in America, are not seen as individuals and safe. Those are two things that black people don't experience. The idea of being an individual, not part of a collective, but an individual. They don't have that experience. And to kind of highlight that in your scenario that you talked about, they make a policy to govern people like her, which, like you said, were black people, to shape their behavior. And really, all of these policies and rules that exist, by and large, if we really do dig into them, what we would find is what they all do is they respond to or reinforce this notion that white folks, or those who are white, come to be called white, have a right to comfort, have a right to be comfortable at all times, to not be offended, to not have their senses offended, and therefore these policies support that ideology. And so what, even with our people, you know, and this possibly the taboo part, even what our people are saying has to do with how they've been socialized to know what's quote unquote appropriate, what's not appropriate, and all these kinds of things. But I mean, have we really talked about packaging and presentation, and how packaging and presentation are things that you would think about regarding inanimate objects, but have a very deep history as it relates to those people who are politically designated as black in America, on appearances, and how it's always been imposed upon black people to appear a certain way, again, for the sake of the sensibilities of, you know, the dominant culture. But that has become a socialization. So now we, quote unquote, are policing each other and talking about appropriateness and what have you, because we know there's a reward and a consequence for that.
Right.
And so when we assimilate and align ourselves with whiteness and white culture and white European beauty standards and those kinds of things, we get rewarded by the dominant culture with goodies and all kinds of access and other kinds of things, which then in turn tells us that that's the right thing or the white thing to do. And we can feel better about ourselves because of it, and we get responded to in a way that causes us to get reacquainted a smidgen with that humanity that's been taken, so then we like it. So then we decide we internalize that, and then we continue to do it, we promote it, we propagate it, and then we will scorn anyone who doesn't do it because they're not doing it, quote unquote, right, which is, we know, code for white.
Definitely. And it seems like it's geared toward black women.
Black women.
Especially, I mean, they're talking about like bonnets and headscarves and pajamas. And, you know, there was this movement in the past with men pulling up their pants, or they have to wear a belt or whatever. But I think, especially for black women right now, this is what it's centered on. And I don't have any type of judgment on it at all, except I understand where this comes from. I understand where rolling out of bed and going to see about your child at school comes from. It's that you've been in bed and that's what you've been doing, because it's hard to get out of bed.
Right.
It's hard to get up and get yourself freshened up and put on some clothes and go see about your child. And it could be a negative conversation that you're having about your child. Most likely, if you are called to the school for any reason, most likely it's about that, or maybe even just dropping off or picking up your children. But I think depression, depression, we have to get real about depression and what it looks like. So I've been taking classes lately. When you're a counselor, you have to keep up on classes and that kind of thing. And they give you the symptoms of the a lot of the diagnoses, especially the major diagnoses that we see in counseling. And it's depression and it's anxiety and it's bipolar and all these things. And when you look at those symptoms, every black person has them in some way or another, unless some intervention has happened.
Right.
Black people have this stuff, and that's a taboo subject right there too, to say all of black America is depressed.
Definitely.
Unless you've had some support and help with it, that you feel the weight of oppression on your neck and can't even articulate it because it's taboo to talk about it. And then it's taboo to go to counseling.
That's right.
And, and all these things. And so we're stuck there, no matter if you're able to get a good job or a nice car, whatever. It's still a part of our everyday as black people in America.
That's right.
And we need help for it. And I'm not saying go run to your nearest clinic because, one of the community clinics, because they may not be able to help you.
That's right.
And that's taboo too, because every single time, Brother Shag, we are unapologetic about offering this support and service for our people specifically. If it's a room full of black people, there is still going to be tension when we say that.
Well, of course.
There's still going to be sighs and looking around like, do y'all hear this? Where are the white people? Somebody come get those. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so every single time we say it, there's tension in the room.
Right.
Even if it's only our people.
Right.
When we say that we provide these services specifically for our people, now that's taboo.
It is taboo. It's taboo because, we're talking about a response, a human response to things that have been done to us. That's not the vantage point on the fire or the paradigm that we typically see or we use. We always look at something being inherently wrong with our people, and therefore they're lackful and they need assistance. And that's not true, and that's not the whole picture. The rest of the picture is what happened to stimulate the behavior that we see. What happened to stimulate it to the point where it becomes normative behavior that we recognize that seems to happen, definitely environmentally. Like what are those things? And that's where we kind of get caught up in the dealing with the manifestation and calling the manifestation the thing. But it is but a manifestation or a side effect or an indicator, because I would love for you to go into making that connection on how, two things. It is problematic because, as you described, it seems to really be aimed, and I'm using aimed because I know that is a military term, that it is aimed at black women.
Yes.
In a different kind of way, in that there is a very lengthy history about the length of this nation in America that has a very specific relationship with those women who are now politically designated as black, that began with our enslaved African foremothers, about policing everything about their existence.
Yes.
Everything about their bodies, how their bodies move, who, access to their bodies, disenfranchising them, dehumanizing them. Like, there's been a lot of very specific and deliberate things done that have targeted, and I'm again using a military term, black women that have found their way into normative popular culture,
yes,
through which all people have been socialized. And I'm bringing that up because that often too is invisible about it. Something in us comes up and says, well, we don't like it, we don't think it's right. But we also don't necessarily see the ways in which that seems to just happen, without any kind of a resistance or pushback, because it's only black women who are being targeted this way. Mm-hmm. And then two, the part about the being depressed and what we've learned about what's happening with our sisters and the way they're responding to ongoing and persistent multi-generational trauma rooted in families and also rooted in the collective experience of black women and black girls, and how all of that
All of it.
can present itself in the form of a bonnet, house slippers, whatever the case is, because what we don't know is the amount of effort it may have taken her to get there.
Yes, exactly. And that should be what we see. That should be, the conversation. And that's what I'm saying. We don't ask what happened. We don't even think about that. We just think about, saying, oh, that's a shame. That's a shame. She should know better than that. She should whatever. And so, and we don't ask what happened to her. And I hear you asking the question, Brother Shaq, about why, it's specifically black women. And it's because we have been holding all of this up all of this time. And we are tired. And we have not had any real support, any real acknowledgement of our own humanity. We have been using sex, drugs, and things to try to feel powerful or try to feel alive. People were saying something like, well, you can get dressed for the club. You can get dressed for the club because, we see you. You definitely look good, so we know you know how to, take your head down, and we know you know how not to wear a bonnet. And the thing about it is that that's where she feels most powerful. She feels most powerful there. She feels, even though it's not true power, it's more like attention.
Right.
Attention.
Right.
And the reason how I know is because I lived it.
Right.
And that's taboo, right? Like, you're not supposed to talk about where you've been.
Right.
You're only supposed to be like, well, I am such and such and so and so. You're not supposed to say, yeah, back in the day, I was extremely depressed and could barely get out of the bed to go see about what my children's teacher needed at school.
Right.
You're not supposed to say that you were sick in any way. You're not supposed to say any of that. You're supposed to look pretty, look presentable and look pretty, because that's what you do. That's what you do, woman. And black woman and black mama. Don't you know they're going to talk about you bad? They're going to talk about you behind your back. And it's like, listen, all of us need to know that this is serious. What the black woman is going through right now is it's utterly serious. And it presents itself in how she parents, how she dresses, how she speaks, and how she walks, and how she shows up in the world. And we know, y'all, if we had to take a poll, or if we had to do some hood research, it would be the majority of us. Definitely. And some of us have access to clothes, shoes, makeup, weave, and these things, and it still doesn't mean that she's got her mind together. That's she's standing up tall in who she really is. It doesn't mean that just because you look good. And that's how we get confused too, right? The way you look is just the way you are. Right. And that's taboo too when we start talking about, I don't think so, because you can totally throw on a wig real quick, throw on some lip gloss and some shoes, and people, they may think something better is happening, but not necessarily.
Well, I mean, we already know that if we'll just take a brief moment to look at the folk who are standing at every intersection in New Orleans with a sign saying, hungry, please help, or spare change, or whatever they've got written on the sign, the first thought, again, as a result of socialization, says, man, that person ought to get a job. I see them there every single day I pass here when I'm coming from my job. And the way they stand here for 8-10 hours a day, they could have been done work the job just like me. That's the first level of thinking. That's the system one. Then we go down a little bit further and get to system two and think about, well, why isn't that person working? Yeah, I know it's hard out here to get a job, but I mean, they got all kind of jobs out there that are like unskilled labor, and I wonder why they're not working one of those jobs. And then we go a little bit deeper and say, well, I wonder if something else is going on. Could they have a mental illness? Could there be something, medically, substance abuse problem? Could that be there? And then we go a little bit deeper and say, well, if those are the cases, what are those responses to, or what are those the results of? And And what ends up happening is we start having to really think humanely about that person. That's a human being, and obviously something did happen.
Yeah.
Because no one, sits in kindergarten or first grade or fifth grade or seventh grade and says, man, when I grow up, I'm gonna grab one of them signs and I'm gonna find me a nice cozy corner and I'm gonna stand on it all day. That's not what happens. But people invariably end up there. So, to think deeply about how really causes us to really remember and consider that those people are human like us. And the reason I'm bringing it up, Mama Fi, is because simply getting a job or someone rolling by and say, okay, you come by my office tomorrow and you're hired, isn't going to solve what's going on with them.
The real issue, right?
It's not even going to address it, likely. And so because now, see, that's what we're talking about policy. Or you don't have a job, you get your job. That's what you need. You need a job, but we can take care of yourself.
But many people have jobs and they can't function on those jobs, right? And that's part of the reason, we think about homelessness. And we're able to really see, man, something must have happened. My children are, like, when they drive down the street, they think about, of course, the humanity of the people who are begging and that kind of thing. I've raised those type of children that don't be like, they on the street, they don't think like that. They do see the humanness. Why can't we do that for black women who come with rollers or who come with a bonnet and some flip-flops or whatever the case may be? Why can't we say, how can I help? Like, or what happened, and or even bless her with a conversation that reminds her that she's human. Like, what's happening? Is this how you doing? Making those kind of things actually do help, because what happens, you walk in a place and people turn their nose up at you.
Right.
They don't speak.
Yep.
They don't do anything. They turn their nose up and they give you a face, and it's mainly the women, the black women, who do these things, and who have been a part of making these policies. I know it because I've worked places that had these policies.
Sure.
And they were black administration. You know what I'm saying? At places of like this, and getting help is okay, especially when we talk about it. Instead of being like, well, one day I was like a woman, I was like that woman, and then here I am. I'm just an amazing woman now.
Right.
And you don't talk about the process. We need to talk about the process instead of making the process taboo.
Well, I think just like the process that you're speaking of, these black women who are unfairly and unduly targeted, we're dealing with, the divine feminine, and we're dealing with feminine energy as it relates to a process. And in this, patriarchal society, all things that are process oriented are frowned upon. Like that woman.
Yeah.
They are also devalued. They are considered to be less than, not as important, not as, necessary even. And so part of our socialization is that ain't nobody got time to be doing all of that she need to have her thing together. And then there's a particular bit of venom for black women who don't, quote unquote, and I'm saying in quotes, appear strong. Like the black woman is supposed to appear that she's got it all together.
Yep.
That no matter what just happened to her,
no matter what is happening to her.
Happening to her in the form of physical, domestic violence, sexual violence, systematic racism,
systematic oppression, all of those things that are happening.
Yeah, that's nobody got time for that.
Yeah.
She's supposed to present herself in a way that makes others feel comfortable.
Yes.
And that's been the legacy of those women who are politically designated as black in America. That's part of the social engineering, and it is reinforced most oftentimes, as you said, by black women.
Yes. We are the worst when it comes to each other. And if anybody knows all we've been through, it's each other.
Right.
And we are the worst when it comes to witnessing quote unquote bad parenting, or witnessing, mamas who are overwhelmed and mamas who don't don't really understand what they're doing and what they may be saying is detrimental to their children. Instead of having the difficult conversation. Now, I know it can get extremely difficult, right?
Right.
But that's why we have stuff like Will Manifest. That's why we have stuff like motherhood, the mothership workshops, and that's why I'm always talking about Black Mama and always talking about these things, is to humanize,
Right.
but also to say this is messages for whoever needs to hear it. And you listen, we on social media, we got to start using that stuff as a tool.
Right.
And I don't mean being preachy on that stuff. I mean drop jewels, and no doubt people will share them. It's going to hit somebody. Somebody's going to be like, dang, man, I didn't think about
Right.
the A, B, and C. I didn't think about counseling. I didn't think about you can learn good parenting. I didn't think about but this is what I've learned, Brother Shaq, that it takes, you got to be a certain level to actually take support and guidance.
That's true.
You've got to be at a certain level to say, I see what you're doing over there, sis. How did you get there?
Right.
It takes a certain level to get there. And many of our mamas aren't even quite there.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah.
Thank you for saying that.
Aren't even, and so that's why we do it through music, we do it through videos, we do it through the True Love Movement Tuesdays, we do it through the YouTube channel, we do it to where you can even fall upon it. You know what I'm saying? You can even stumble upon work, and guess what? When you're ready, it's gonna pop up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I thank you for saying that there's levels to it, but that isn't at all, family, for who's listening. Again, you can catch us on the Facebook Live and the liking the True Love Movement page where they're live now, but we don't have access. We're not able to actually see it right now with your comments, but we're going to keep the thread open and respond to those once we get off air, as well as on the web, www.wbok1230m.com, as well as the WBOK 1230m app, which is available in Google Play and also in the App Store. The idea that they got levels that you have to be, at a certain point before that you're open to receiving the information and then being able to do something with it is also taboo, because there are very hurt segments inside of our community. Again, the hurt and the trauma, they got levels to that too.
Yes, they do.
And the also the level of functionality, that we're not, again, a monolith when it comes to us responding to the persistent trauma and dehumanization of this 400-year struggle. And what happens, and I've actually heard this, Mama Fire, is that usually, even when something is presented, which again it happens as a knee-jerk for most things, when something is presented to a particular group within the larger group, somebody will say, well, what about this? What about this segment of this group? What do you have for them? And so, everybody doesn't do everything, but everybody should do something. And we're clear that there are some people who, kind of like when there's different kinds of things happening, and people say, the people who really need to be here are the people who are out there, doing all that killing and blah, blah, blah. The thing that we know is the people who are really immersed in that particular world, they're not going to come to that thing,
Right.
because they got a completely different set of circumstances that they're dealing with in terms of their survival in that moment. They're not at a point where they have enough relief to even evaluate the totality of their situation to be able to, analyze, is this in line with my highest good? Not at that moment. It doesn't mean that they can't be, and that there are people who do that particular work, meaning that there are people who connect very well with those who are, not listening right now to True Love Movement Tuesdays.
Yeah.
There are people who do that, and so our responsibility in terms of being, liberated and accountable gatekeepers is to make these connections for folks, to make the connections as a bridge, because again, everybody, like a little bitty baby who's learning to walk is that, even if they've learned how to walk and they're a week or two in it, they ain't prepared to run the Crescent City Classic.
Right.
That's
right.
not that's not even in the realm of what is reasonable for them at that time. But that ain't no shortcoming on their part. It isn't time for that yet. And so, we got to remember that as black folks, though things have been imposed upon us and we are seen as part of a collective, we do have very real individual realities. We have and that it is not a one size fit all kind of thing, nor should it be. And nor should we expect, again, everybody to be able to do everything to accommodate every particular thing. We're talking specifically to people who can hear us.
Yeah. Who can hear us, and those who can hear us maybe are able to reach those who can't.
Well, those who hear them. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's always those
Yeah.
rich people. Like they got
Yeah.
people who can hear us, and they can hear other people that can't hear us, kind of a thing. And that's usually the case with all of us. You know what I mean? So I know it's sometimes taboo to talk about that, but that's important that we make that distinction, that though it is for everybody, we are reasonable and we understand that you have to have a certain level of functioning to be able to make the best use of the game that you get from us.
That's true. That's true. We are on WBOK 12:30 a.m. Real Talk for Real Time.
That's
this
right.
is True Love Movement Tuesday.
That's right.
On April 30th, 2019, and we are here together. We're going to give out the call-in number.
That's right, the solution line,
Solution
family.
line, WBOK Solution line. The number is 504-260-9265. 504-260-9265. I think we'd love to hear what you have to say about taboo topics. I mean, we haven't even gotten into anything but one.
Right, there's so many.
For real,
right?
yeah. And so, sex is a huge one, Brother Shaq.
Sex?
Come on.
Is sex a taboo topic?
Yes, it is. It's crazy that it's a taboo topic, and it's how we all got here.
And it's also an FCC topic. So we may.
Oh, you can't say
no,
that.
we can definitely say it. I'm just reminding us as we explore.
I'm saying it's that taboo, Lord. But it also sells. How about
Absolutely, yeah. And I think that's part of the lure. That this is, when you're dealing with sex, this is something we ought not be talking about. It's something we ought not be doing, and that helps the appeal. They call it sex appeal, and particularly with the visual, it's just like produce. It's the eye appeal, it's the buy appeal. Eye appeal is buy appeal, so that means when it looks and presents itself a certain way.
By B-U-Y.
B-U-Y, right on. And speaking of buying, we got somebody calling with some taboo stuff here on the line. Thank you for calling, Holder. Thank you for calling. What's happening?
Wow. I didn't quite know I was going to taboo subject, but I was listening to the earlier conversation, and I wanted to just, commend you on the conversation and I'm guilty of what Sister Malphite was talking about with kind of prejudging the way things look. And I just wanted to make a comment on it. It was real eye-opening to think about, just circumstances that may have caused, a person to come out in the public, as such, or, anything like that. And I just, like I said, it was real eye-opening. Kind of made me feel bad, but, negatively beforehand, you know what I mean?
Right.
So that was real eye-opening, man. And I just...
Right on, bro.
And I know the sisters have always carried us, throughout history in America since we've been, they were oppressed and whatnot. The sisters are always taking the forefront.
That's
and
right.
I just didn't look at it like, man, they're tired.
Tired.
They're just tired.
Right. Right on, brother.
Yeah, thank you.
We thank you for
Is there a new topic, though? What are we talking
Yeah,
about?
well-
What's this about?
Well, today's topic we were talking about, today's topic is actually, Mama Fire coined it as the sweetest taboo. The sweetest taboo. And so we're talking about, various taboos in terms of conversation or concept that the kind of conversations we don't usually have amongst ourselves, and if we do have them, we're a very select group, and typically we're not, we don't have them publicly because of the shame or the guilt or different things around that. And quite frankly, it kind of, as you described, we're just not always skilled in having the conversation because of some of our implicit biases that we project on the folk, unbeknownst to us and them, because that's been part of our 400-year socialization here in America.
Right. Wow. Wow. Okay, that sounds good. I'm gonna tune in. Maybe someone else can call in.
Yeah.
Tell me something, but I again just wanted to thank you for the conversation.
Well, right on.
And man, I'm glad that you're alive. I'm glad you're alive. I'm able to call in, man. You always have very, very provocative, thought-provoking conversation with, I think this radio station is founded upon. And you're going to continue to carry the torch. So thank you.
Well, thank you, dear brother. We intend to do the tradition proud here on WBOK 1230 AM, Real Talk for Real Times. Thank you for holding, caller. What's happening? Hello, you're on.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay. Mama Fire and Brother Jack?
Yes. What's happening?
Okay. I was in attendance at your production at the Healing Center again. What you call it again?
Cafe Istanbul?
Yes, I was there in attendance. And you listened to you all for over, I guess a year. Now, I'm a senior citizen, 69 years old. But let me tell y'all something. I'm digging y'all.
Right on.
I'm digging y'all. And I wish y'all much success going forward. So I don't know if you could tell by the way I'm talking that I'm a religious person and we all got our religion.
Uh-huh.
But I'm keeping y'all, in my prayers because y'all are really on fire.
Right on, right on.
Y'all. I'm
Thank you.
digging y'all. Keep doing what you're doing.
Right
Thank
on.
you,
Mama
Mom.
Fire, Brother Shaq.
Right on.
Right on.
Thank you, Mom. We appreciate that.
Thank you. And those type of things, they're beautiful to hear, and they keep us going, brother.
That's right.
They do.
That's right.
They do. And it's not. It seems like it's taboo to tell each other how we feel.
Yeah.
How we really feel, because we think if we say, "Oh, y'all on fire," then that means that we're gonna have a big gate or something like that, or that means that we're gonna think we all that or something. But if it's the truth, it's important to say those things to people so we can know though that our community is seeing us and our community likes our style.
That's right, because this is our style, and I know we do something different. We have our own lane, and we stay in it, and we do a lot in it, the lane.
Yes, we do.
But we do stay in it, and it does feel good. We thank you, Mom, and thank you to everyone who has again been listening to True Love Movement. We've been here on WBOK. This is our 5th year. We're into the 5th year now, and we're so grateful for WBOK to have the courage and audacity to have the kind of programming it has across the board, and to include us in that deep tradition, and that it is always our intention to bring you a show that you can learn from and contribute to and participate in, but most of all be proud of.
Yes.
For Black folks to really be able to be proud of the show. Where we've had, in 5 years, Mama Fire, no shucking and jiving, no cooning, no tap dance. We ain't had none of that.
None of it.
For 5 years, and we don't have it nowhere anyway, but I think it's important that we really honor the sacred time we have on the air, and realize that it is an awesome responsibility, because people are listening, and when someone gives you their ear, we're obliged to have something to impart. So
yeah,
ain't nothing taboo about that.
Nothing taboo. We always bringing it back, huh?
But bring it back to sex, though, Mama Fire, because I know that when you said that, DC Paul looked up, and the people started calling. But I know folk want to hear, how in the world, since sex is how we all got here, how's that taboo with Black people, though? Because it seems like the dominant culture.
Let's just talk about Black people.
Yeah, because it seems like the dominant culture is everywhere. They've put it everywhere, and it's
still taboo. It's still taboo. It's everywhere, but it's also taboo. That's the sneakiness of this whole thing. and let's just talk about black women.
Right.
You know, I think around the time of the burlesque show, you know, I got some beautiful sisters, Sweet Storm Productions.
Yes, you do.
Put on a burlesque show, and there was a issue with that amongst part of the community,
right,
that were, you know, just like, well, you know, we don't need to look at black women that way, or we don't, you know.
Yeah, I remember that.
You know, why they, you know, acting like whores or something of that nature, and it's
right.
like, a black woman is divinely sexual and divinely feminine, and sexuality is part of that. Sexuality is part of a black woman, and we don't want to look at her that way, but then that's all we look at.
Right.
So it's that's what I'm saying. It's sneaky and unbalanced in a way that women are, black women especially, are sexual objects.
Oh,
that's
yes.
how we want to look at her. We don't want to hear anything she has to say, anything that's on her pretty little mind. We don't want to hear any of those things, but we also want to denounce and pull her down because she's a sexual being.
Right.
And that the whole topic is taboo. And I've felt that as well, being a mother of 5. You know, people look at me, if I say, you know, I got 5 children, they look at me like, oh, they give me those eyes in like the most shocking face, you know, the little emoji that got his hands on his ears and in a big old mouth, and it's like, what does that mean? And I'm wondering, like, is it because I've had to have sex 5 times to have children, or I'm divinely sexual to have children, or because a woman with 5 children looks a certain way. She looks toe down, she got a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, she got 5 little snotty nosed babies running around, and you know, it's crazy the way we look at women as just their bodies, as just sexual objects, instead of whole and complete people.
That's right.
Who also has lent their bodies into bringing children into this world. Taboo.
That is taboo, Mama Fire. I think that, you know, the idea when you were opening up with that, I was thinking how the thing about the sex is that people want to. It's not the problem of the black woman being sexual. It's about her being sexual and no one supervising that. That's not being
no one's in charge.
Right, no one's in charge of her sexuality except her, and that's there's no history.
Oh no, you're not supposed to do that.
Right, there's no history of that deliberately. So, and I think that's part of the, you know, part of it, because there's no memory in the history of America and the formation of America through today. There's no history of there being a social norm whereby black women are in charge of their bodies. There's just no history, so there's no reference point. There's none of that. So when it happens, or when we catch a glimpse of it happening, people have this visceral response like, oh, that shouldn't happen, because that ain't supposed to happen. Like, that ain't nowhere. And then, because we are talking about taboo things, then there's some, you know, someone will say something about, you know, Adam and Eve, and they talk about how, you know, how the world is like this because Eve ate the apple. I mean, there's some things. This is about the sweetest taboo. It don't get much sweeter than the Garden of Eden, right? And the bite of that juicy apple that Eve took, that had suddenly transformed the world into what it is. And so,
come on. And
so now, you know, the original woman is the bane of everyone's existence, and she must be subjugated. She must be bridled at all times. And to the degree that now, you know, as over the course of 400 years, she's even internalized the idea about herself. And, you know, how that affects her behavior and how she shows up in the world, you know, we see it, but then there's of course, she's at odds with herself because it doesn't quite feel natural.
It doesn't feel right.
It doesn't feel right.
Yeah.
But then
I'm telling you, it doesn't feel right.
I know this, but then there's an imposition, though, that what you're feeling, that is essentially telling you that what you're feeling is the wrong feeling.
Yeah.
That you're supposed to feel the way that you've been socialized or trained or conditioned to feel, and that's normal. And so there's a lot of things that are incongruent that happen through imposition, through that power dynamic that we talked about in the first hour. That again is part of the larger racial construct and racial context that lends itself to reinforcing these norms and thereby making the whole idea of talking about sex and a black woman being a sexual being taboo.
Yes. And all of that, how would you say, all of it, and for black women especially, you know, we're talking about kind of like against black women, but specifically for black women, we have the ability to recognize this in ourselves, to recognize that we are human, and that means we are, that a part of being human is being divinely sexual. But it's taboo to even talk about sex with our daughters.
Right.
With our children, with our daughters and our sons.
That's right.
It's like we give our sons the permission to do whatever they want to do. We don't train them how to be safe. We don't train them about consent.
No.
But then we don't talk to our daughters at all. We tell them to keep their legs closed, and that's that.
Boom.
Knowing that's what you didn't do, mama.
Right.
Knowing that. And we perpetuate the same generational cycle of putting our girls out there without the proper understanding of herself as a sexual being.
That's right.
Without the proper understanding of sex and the responsibility and maybe the danger, as well as the beauty,
right,
and the wonderfulness of sex. We are not. And even in 2019, I am witnessing these mamas say, "Oh, Mama Fi, you gotta talk to my daughter." And I said, "Oh, what's going on with her, Mama? What happened?" And she break it down. "Oh, she's doing this and she's doing that. Talk to her." I start talking to her and nobody has the conversation. I said, "Has anybody talked to you about sex?"
Right.
"Oh, no." And I'm like, "Oh, baby, we got to bring Mama in on this conversation."
Right.
Because mamas, we already know that we sneak and we you know, because it's shameful. It's shameful that you're a sexual being. It's shameful that, you know, you're even thinking about or know about or whatever sex. Even in the internet age, right? Where it's right at your fingertips, we are still not having the conversations. And then we are sending our daughters in a detriment into the society where they're being hurt and they're being made sick and and then we bring babies into the world, right? Without any understanding of our moon cycles, any understanding of the divineness of our wombs, any understanding about the connection between your womb and your mind and your heart. No connection is happening here. And this is a plug. There's a community workshop that is happening at Womanifest.
That's right.
And Nicole Deggins is providing it at Womanifest, the festival part on Sunday, May 26th. She is providing the magic moon cycle.
All right.
And this is a community workshop that is talking to teens and tweens about their moon cycle. And so that's happening Sunday, May 26th, 2019. And so, listen, we need to be talking to our daughters about the powers that we have, mamas. And maybe the motherhood, the mothership is important to teach the mamas to understand the powers that she has. And so she can, and the power of teaching your daughter about who she is and all that the magic she holds, including sexual magic.
I like that, Mama Fi. I'm glad that you and Mama Nicole have partnered up to do that and to bring that in a way and in a time that is definitely necessary. It's long overdue. It's long overdue. But I can't help but wonder if all of those things and the mamas and others not wanting to talk to specifically the daughters about, because we will get into the sons part of it.
Come on, brother.
I wonder if that isn't simply just a response or to what the mamas know in preparing the daughters that we're not going to talk about this because when it happened, ain't nobody going to listen to you anyway. You know what I mean? Like how deep is that the reason we don't deal with it or the reason we don't talk about it is because the country has a long history of, what black women saying not being validated or not being real. So I suspect or rather, I wonder rather if it's not an instinctual thing about we ain't fixing to talk about this because it that because if we name it, then it may disempower you even more. And I don't know that to be true because I've never been a mother or nor have I been a daughter and had that conversation. But just hearing it and thinking, again, thinking about behaviors and critically analyzing something that's become normative behavior, where could that have come from? And I just suspect, or at least wonder, if that's not a plausible explanation, whether it's ever spoken or not, because this is a show about sweetest taboos and like the kind of things that aren't said or aren't spoken, but just to the degree that it seems to happen so prevalently and so like, oh yeah, like you said, they tell you like, ain't nobody talking to me about that. And we know mamas know because they've had the experience. Could it be that? Could it be that that's what has come of this? That the sisters have just resigned to the fact that, no one's going to hear you, no one's going to listen to you. So roll the dice and I hope things be okay.
Yeah, it's easier to just throw her out there in that water than it is to prepare her for what potentially could happen. And now we're talking about trauma. Now we're talking about the taboo of trauma. And yes, there's a taboo around sex, but I don't want to connect sex and trauma because it doesn't necessarily have to be traumatic. Happen.
Right.
I wish I did not have to heal from sexual trauma, but I'm glad to be free so that I can express my sexuality in the most healthy, most beautiful way.
Right.
But trauma, we're not talking about it. We're just sweeping it under the rug. We're just saying, oh, poor baby, keep moving.
Right.
We're not saying you may need some support or help with this. And that ties into the taboo of counseling or taboo of getting any help that you may need.
Well, historically too, though, particularly when we think about the origins on the plantation, there wasn't any help to get. There wasn't any somebody's going to come make this better. There wasn't any of that there, and I'm convinced that over, when I did the breakdown over the centuries, so we're talking about over 400 years. Inside of 400 years, we're talking about likely hundreds of millions of lifetimes that are interrelated.
Yes.
I mean, it's incomprehensible what our people have experienced. It is incomprehensible to the degree that this English language is just not sophisticated enough for us to really be able to articulate it. And I'm saying we're in the age of awareness, where we're just coming into that fact and, other things that are poignant within that to say, man, how pivotal that has been in our development off the plantation, but the way we were really developed on the plantation, is incomprehensible. It is incomprehensible, and I really do think still, even with that it is a response to all of that. It, when those of us who are black, when we have problem or we have trouble, something in all of us knows that I better figure this out.
Yeah.
We don't have let me call so and so, and they're gonna come in and take care of this for me, or let me call. Like, that's not part of our experience because it's never been. So even though there may be things in place that quote unquote all citizens and all taxpayers and all all this other stuff, there's something in us ancestral that knows that ain't for us. That's not gonna come do that for us. And if we didn't know, there's also some history of, if I tell someone, if something does happen, they're not gonna believe me, or they're gonna say it didn't really happen to you.
Right.
Or
they're gonna figure out a way that it was your fault that it happened to you.
Right. So we got all of those real life examples that tell us, that instruct us, it ain't even worth talking about. The challenge is though, and at the same time, what we've also learned is that we don't deserve a better quality of life like you're describing, to say if I get some social emotional support, I can arrive at a healthier version of me, and that I can actually heal this trauma, and that I can, our self-esteem is so, our collective self-esteem is so low because of the multi-generational dehumanization. That's why we got to talk about it in those terms, because not doing that creates a cognitive dissonance that keeps us on this loop of, the presumption of some recurring isolated phenomenon that, oh, it's happening again. It's like it's never not happened.
Yeah.
It's never not happened. And then again,
it's taboo to even talk about it, Brother Shay.
I know.
Yeah.
But that taboo, the idea that it's taboo keeps us in the trauma.
Yes.
I think it keeps us in the trauma, and the most liberating thing that we can do is remove the taboos and speak our truth.
Yes. And Brother Shaq, when we're doing the work that we do, we don't have a magic wand or anything like that. We're not taking away anybody's trauma. We don't have the ability to do that. But what we do is listen to them tell their story.
Right.
Listen to them say it as many times as they need to say it. Listen and respond in a heart human way.
Right.
But it's because the actual throat chakra or it's been completely closed up and we haven't been able to say it and nobody's there to listen to it, that the healing is in saying it.
Yep.
The healing is in saying it, and somebody there to listen, acknowledge, and help you see that it wasn't your fault.
Right.
And we're talking about all of the different traumas here because we're talking about sexual trauma, and yes, that's important, but it also ties into physical abuse as well. There's no reason to be being violated against or violent, against. I think of children who have come who were physically abused by their parents. I think of partners, intimate partner abuse and these kind of things. And part of knowing it's not their fault is important too, but also the power and control part.
Yes.
Both in sexual trauma and in physical abuse trauma, and saying that this is not about you being a bad person. This is not about sex either. Like you were sexy that day or something.
Right.
It's not about those things. It's all about power and control from the perpetrator's perspective. That they're utilizing their power. All the time when someone is violated, it's because they're seen as the other person being less than or less powerful than them.
And on the subject of taboo, or it's on the taboo subject as it relates to trauma, violation, and imposition, I would like to interject something that is very taboo, that doesn't get talked about publicly, sometimes not even privately, but it's certainly felt wholeheartedly with our people, is administrative violence.
Come on, Brother Shay.
Administrative violence, and I learned administrative violence through the People's Institute for Survival and Beyond, so I didn't come up with that in terms of conceptualizing it. But we all know what it is, and if you don't, in short, for example, administrative violence is exactly what's happening inside of school systems as it relates to staff and other teachers and administrators whose jobs are on the line, who are being threatened to comply with things that don't agree with their heart and don't agree with their sense of what's right for other human beings and little human beings. But it is very violent in that their livelihood is on the line, their character is attacked, and their ability to find work and employment becomes jeopardized because they are recognizing those who are, politically invisible and politically invisibilized as human, and then saying very forcefully, why aren't you doing right by these human beings who are, again, not viewed as human beings from a political standpoint. And so administrative violence is very real because it's very traumatic, in so much that our people who are inside of these systems and institutions, and I'm talking now specifically like within local New Orleans education, are becoming very, very damaged to the degree where there's like shell shocked. Like they've been on the battlefield, they've been left out there for too long, meaning they are having real struggles trying to keep their jobs, trying to, manage their lives, trying to be good, healthy people for the students that come to school that are relying on them, and they know to the degree how they're relying on them, and then for their own selves and their own sanity, and they're being dehumanized inside of that system. And listen, many of those people who are there, wanted to be there because they thought they could make a difference. And when they thought they could change some things inside those systems and institutions, and once they went through all of the hurdles, all of the schooling, did all those kinds of things, got all the certification and all the letters and all the degrees, they go back to get these jobs, and they are dehumanized, and then they are paid to dehumanize their own children and children who look like their children as part of a quote unquote a job. And they're struggling. I mean, they are really, really struggling, and it's showing up in their lives. And
Ooh.
and their lives are in a mess a lot of the times.
Man,
as a result of
being
that.
there. I remember being there, and I feel really blessed to be one that has gotten out of it.
Right.
But I remember the last year of my third year being a part of the school systems. I was a school counselor at that time, being sick, physically sick.
Yeah.
My breasts were hard as a rock.
I remember that.
I was pale. My hair was falling out. I mean, I was physically sick, and I had to take a year off of counseling, a year off. It's burnout to the nth degree.
Right.
Because whenever you're behind enemy lines, when they talk about the school system, there's no mental health support. There's no mental health days that you can take to take care of yourself. Matter of fact, the conversation is around go, and not did you stop, did you eat, did you take care of yourself, did you,
right.
And so it builds a culture of giving, even though it doesn't feel right, even though the rules, something is wrong about these rules and policies. You see people dehumanize children, and you try to stand up and stand tall against it, and you try to say this isn't right, and then you lose your job.
Correct.
After all those years of being there, you lose your job, and and really, we had to be able to create sustainable places where our gifts and talents can shine for ourselves.
That's right.
Because some of these teachers and counselors and people, they are excellent human beings.
Excellent.
And they want to do beautiful things, but they're in a box with all kind of other crazy stuff. And they do their best, but they can't work in a box. We have to be able to create. Here I go philosophizing, but I think
this is
creating
a way to liberation.
Yeah, it is. Creating ways where everybody can be humanized.
That's right.
The teachers, the students, the administration, the cafeteria lady, the janitor, everybody involved in making the school what it is.
Well, hey, listen. Since this is the show of the Sweetest Taboo, I can say this in the appropriate setting, which there is never an inappropriate setting, but I think our listeners and viewers and callers have been kind of primed for hearing things that they may not hear otherwise. There is a certain admission for a rational person to make that the education system as it exists, and really as it has always existed, is in fact a foot of oppression.
Yes, it is.
On the necks of black people.
Designed that way.
That is the first thing. That is the very first thing that it is. That is what it is. The entire system, from daycare to grad school.
Come on, brother.
That's what it is. And I'm not saying this subjectively as an opinion. I'm saying that what you just described, Mama Fi, and if it had to be articulated, I think, I've spent some time in there, so I know what's happening. There is an adversarial relationship, and the adversarial And a presumptive adversarial relationship exists inside of all systems and institutions in America. And that presumptive adversarial relationship is an us and them. And so you have people who are really at war. They are really at war because they are feeling the one thing and like, this is not right for these children, and these are our children, and I have to do something. And then there's something
and
acting upon.
They have
to be here because they're here, and it's like the deal is it's intended to be that way. There's nothing humane about it. It's not intended to elevate the humanity in our people. You know, I said many years ago through a very audacious workshop called Fixing What's Wrong with New Orleans Schools, that if a school is not teaching a black child to be free, then what is it teaching them?
Come on.
That's the only fundamental question that we have to ask. So therefore, if the school is not teaching that child to be a free person, a free human being, then what could it be teaching them? And so there's the taboo of it is you've got the two things happening. There's this cathartic thing that happens in the throes of the fight for justice and against injustice. But then there's also this ignorance of a systemic, deliberate design and intent backed by the institutional power granted to it through this American scheme. And so it's doing what it's intended to do. It's never intended to do nothing else. And even on the other side of it, it produces people who are in fact, you know, great employees, if that, for very low-level menial jobs. And you got people out there fighting for that. And they're not really fighting for that. They're just fighting for the idea that you can't tell us we can't have it, or you can't tell us we can't be here. But there is a dream, Mama Fi. And when I say a dream, this is a dream bigger than Martin Luther King's dream, I think. The dream is that black people are going to hold the dominant white culture accountable.
I think people snoring.
You think that's a deep sleep?
That's a deep sleep right there, because it's not gonna happen.
Right.
It's not gonna happen because to hold white people accountable is to destroy all of the systems that exist in America. Is to destroy all of it, and
right.
That's not and that it won't happen on their watch, on their accord.
Yeah. And it won't happen as an event either.
That's right. That's right.
You know, it's.
But I think we have the possible, and here we go again, and another taboo topic is black sex. Another taboo topic is pulling away. When we say that, Brother Shaq, and we talk to people about it, it's, oh man, it's like, shut up, or like, don't say that.
Right.
What? We would leave the world as we know it?
Right.
Yeah, because we have the ability to create what it is that we need. We gotta understand that we are the original,
right.
the original people, and all of what we see now has been built on our backs.
That's right.
Built on our backs and built to be completely against what it is to be
human.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to say what it means to be a black person,
or
you know what it means to be black people, and you know, I got in one of my pieces, I talk about the beast be pulling out all the stops. Miseducate our babies soon as the beat drop. Inject us and jail us, genocide off top. And so I'm talking about all the different ways and all the different systems. It's not just one system, one big bad system, the justice system. It's not just the education system. It's not just the medical system. It's not just, it's every single system.
Every one of them.
And so they need that much influence and that much power to take your mind.
That's right, to keep us here.
And so it's time for us to take our own minds and really talk about what needs to be talked about, Brother Shaq. Stop doing the same old thing that we've always done because we're getting the same old results. And so pulling back and divesting in every way that we possibly can.
Right.
And there's some ways that you may feel like that you can, or there's not an ability to. But it's about finding and instilling in our children that they can come up with ways to fill those gaps.
Right. Well, here's what makes it taboo, though, because what you said sounds logical and reasonable. Again, I prefaced the earlier part that we discussed with about rational thinkers and rational feelers. But you know what makes that taboo? Because now, after 400 years of very deliberate and violent coercion, what our people have arrived at is assimilation is the way. That what we need to do is get on this capitalism train and become good capitalists, so that we can enjoy the fruits of the generational wealth generation that we've done without having the wealth accumulation that we've been denied. And so to the degree that we're thinking that that's what we lack, because that's really a prevalent thought now, man. It's because we've become quote unquote educated in many ways, and we are intellectuals, and we intellectualize things, and we can talk to white people, and white people can talk to us, and we can all have a conversation.
Can we all just get along? That's
heady, but not human, because it's real heady and there's no heart in it. We think that we can, that's our way out. The trouble with the whole capitalist model is it requires someone to be exploited. Capitalism only works at the expense of someone else, because we're talking about weights and measures. And so then when we become good capitalists, we do that still at the expense of
there got to be poor people involved.
Some others of our people not being that. And then we'll also get diverted by the tokenism of the exceptional people who look like us, who've been able to do well inside the capitalistic model, because it does have to let some folk in, not for the purpose of anything else, but let some folk in because that keeps hope alive. That keeps the idea that, hey, I could do it too. They did it, or I can do it. And it also gives those who were able to get in and do well the onus to say, you see, you can do anything you want to be. Look at me. I did that. You too can do that if you really apply yourself, and you really believe in yourself, and you really, you do all the right things, and you do exactly what white people tell you. You too can have that. And so that's how many of our people get lured into the idea of, oh, I know, I got to be educated. And the taboo in that subject, Mama Fire, is to consider how many of our people have been educated. I'm talking about thoroughly educated, doctorates, several masters. They got all kinds of letters behind their name. They've spent $750,000 in school. They got debt. They've spent childbearing years in school. They've done all these kinds of things, and they still are discontented. They are still angry. They're still being violent. They're still being messed over. And the reason is because they're still politically designated as black. And that is the fundamental reason. And that's the part of it that makes it taboo, is because the thought is, if you're having a problem, something you don't know, you need to be more educated. You need to get education, you need specialized training, blah, blah. And that's none of those things deal with the wholeness of what racism is and what it has done and how it functions. It simply tells you that you have an individual opportunity and then an individual responsibility. But that is a facade, because you are collectivized no matter where you go. So what I mean by that is if you put a room of black people together and dress them all in suits or women's suits or whatever, suit dresses, whatever it is. If you do that, no one, people may presume that this is a room full of educated people.
Yes,
by,
they do.
by presentation and perception. However, in truth, you won't be able to know just by looking who's got the PhD, who doesn't have a high school diploma. You won't know none of that. What you'll see is a room full of black folks who are well dressed, and they're going to get black folks treatment. So even though they had these great and lengthy and real world individual accomplishments, in the midst of that collective, it means nothing. It means nothing to those who have politically designated them in that way and collectivized in that way and use racism to hold that arrangement in place. It does nothing for them, and the proof of that is the response, the way our people are trying to respond to the administrative violence that they're experiencing, even though we know how educated they are.
So we took this thing full circle from racism to racism.
That's right.
Talking about taboo subjects today, and we went from racism to history to sex to trauma to violence, and we are back around at the big dog, racism, race and racism, and so thank y'all for joining us today.
Definitely.
I do want to talk a little bit about Will Manifest for the last couple of minutes.
Please.
Brother Shaq, if you're interested in Will Manifest Weekend, this is the 10th one. We are excited and so proud to be bringing this to the New Orleans community. If you're interested, take a look at our True Love Movement page on Facebook or True Love Movement page on Instagram. All of the flyers about all of the events are on there. And we also will have an event page coming up soon. You'll be able to buy tickets for Runaway Girl, the stage play, which is happening on Friday, May 24th at 6 p.m.
That's going to be something.
Yeah, shout out to Loretta Marie, which is she is the director of the beautiful stage play that this is our second year in a row doing this. And then the next day at 9 o'clock in the morning, we have the Resolving Rape Culture workshop by Brother Shaq. And then at the same time, around 11 o'clock that same day at the same place, Dunbar Life Center, they'll have the Birth Story Project by Sister Midwife Productions. And that is a celebration of Black Mama and her birth stories. And then that night, we are having the Series of Serious Sisters Hip Hop Show. You definitely want to be there. That's at Embassy Studios, 2120 Port Street. And we're going to have the bomb sister MCs, Queens of the Mic.
That's right.
We got High Heel Dula, Black Pearl, Phoenix Ali, Malika, Queen of the Bay. We have J-Lots. And guess who's our special guest?
Who's that?
Sunny Patterson.
Whoa, Sunny.
And if you've ever seen her rap and do some hip hop, baby, you think you've seen her do poetry.
Right.
You gotta see her pull out that MC hat. And of course, Mama Fire. And then the next day, Sunday, May 26th, is our Will Manifest Festival. And it's going to be held at Taylor Park from 12 to 6. We'll have free community workshops, including the magical moon cycle that we talked about earlier, including the sacredness of safe intimacy, including a survival of the fittest workshop, and including a small business entrepreneurship workshop as well. And so we'll have food, vendors, performances. Y'all come on out and spend Sunday with us, absolutely free. So check with us and come be a part of a Do for Self festival, Brother Shaq. This is all us sharing our gifts and talents and sharing our resources. We are creating a festival. We have created a festival for us, by us, and that's okay, unapologetically. And so you should be there. Be there, be a vendor, be a performer. Just let us know if you're interested. There are flyers all around. There are email addresses and phone numbers if you need to get in touch with somebody. Come be a part of Will Manifest 10 weekend.
Right on, Mama Fire. Thank you for doing Will Manifest. Thank you for conceiving of Will Manifest. It's been a real blessing to the community. You know what I'm saying?
It's beautiful.
It has inspired so many other things that have happened since Will Manifest.
Yes.
It has also been a place where many sisters here in the city have gotten together and formed friendships and relationships
Yes.
and do work and business together as a result of Will Manifest. It has helped launch careers for folks. It has gained, people exposure. It has done a lot of things, and I know we'll talk more about all of those things that Will Manifest has already done, and including your vision for what it will do. But
Yes, it will, because we can have it. We can have it in Atlanta. We can have it in Oakland. We can have it in New Jersey. We can have it in New York. We can have it in Africa, all different countries of Africa. We can have it in the Caribbean. Everywhere we will have it.
That's right.
And so listen, be a part of what's going on with Will Manifest, because it's really growing and spreading the message that Black women manifest their dreams.
Right on. It is an institution all its own at this point, after 9 times. And as we have, just a few moments left, this show of Sweetest Taboos, I thought it would be fitting that we could close up with another taboo, a big taboo, that's encompassing all that we've talked about, including the last thing you just said. And that taboo is that, you can let a designated, a Black person, a so-called Black person who loves themselves and respects themselves, can be completely affirmative for themselves, and that them being that way is not the same as them being against white people.
Come on, Brother Shad.
That is a serious taboo, because when you say things, and when I say things, and when others say things about edifying Black people because they are Black, what the socialization has taught us to hear is, oh, you hate white people. And it's important that we point that out, because number one, no one ever said that. Number two, that's not even true, because that's not where the energy is. But number three, that is the way socialization works. That is evidence of how the racist construct lives in us, how
Yes.
we have internalized that when we hear something that isn't affirmative to the dominant culture or to white folks that we know personally or what have you, being comfortable and being
Come on,
lifted
Brother Shad.
up,
Speak the truth.
the presumption is that someone said something disparaging about white people. And the reason why that's significant is because white people in America have never been collectivized. Only Black people, only other people of color are collectivized. White people exist in America, and deliberately so, because they set it up that way to be individuals. And so there is a visceral response from Black people and all people who are not clear when they hear something said about white people, because white people don't even be walking around talking about white people. They don't say white. Like, it's completely invisible, but yet everyone is thinking about it. I know people of color are thinking about it. I know Black people are damn sure thinking about it. And so the idea that we can't say that we love our people without it being seen as taboo.
Come on, Brother Shad.
Is just an indicator of how the dehumanization has worked in all of us.
Yeah.
And how it was intended to work, and that it is very important and vital. It is necessary that if we ever intend to experience our full humanity in America before we transition to the ancestral realm, we're going to have to undo that in us.
Definitely.
We
have control, we have power and control to be able to.
And we have to be able to confront it in order to deal with it. And so we can't be afraid to express ourselves this way and say what's true. We're not putting any energy or any negative energy one way or the other on the collective of whiteness. We know racism is a real thing, but race ain't even real. I say that's right. Race is not even real.
No.
The racism is very real. And we understand that, and we understand the difference. Of course, that's for another show. But just so our people are clear, that True Love Movement doesn't hate white people. True Love Movement loves black folks. And that is only logical, normal, and rational because we are that. And we pay homage and honor to our experience in America and all of the things that have made us the way that we are. And that the way that we are is in fact a response to the multi-generational, persistent trauma that it continues to be re-stimulated in this racist construct. So whatever kind of way black folks are acting, as you said, Mama Fire, earlier, we all are survivors. Mm-hmm. And my recommendation is always to all people who are listening, be gentle with black people.
Yes.
Be gentle with black people.
Be gentle with yourself.
Yeah, try it on for yourself and be gentle with black people, because the compassion word is the way we get our sanity back. And you're not going to have compassion for anyone until you've had that experience for yourself. And only you can do that for you. So like True Love Movement on Facebook, follow True Love Movement on Instagram. Subscribe to the True Love Movement YouTube channel where you can catch this and previous shows from the last 5 years on WBOK 12:30 a.m. Real Talk for Real Times. Catch the lectures and the workshops. Visit www.truelovement.com for more information. Call the Love Line at 504-309.
Love.
For your wherever you are on your wellness journey. And so we thank you for listening. Share this show with people that you respect. Talk about it. The thread will be open. Of course, we didn't get a chance to engage on air, but we will thereafter. Let us know what you think, and stay tuned to next Tuesday for True Love Movement Tuesdays. I am Brother Shaq.
And Mama Fire.
For True Love Movement Tuesdays. Wholeness, family.
Wholeness. Woo!
Like, you still live up there, Mama Fire?
Yeah, I was barely hanging on, my family.
You're dropping them
I've
jewels.
had a long day. And I only got a chance to eat right before I got here. And it was just a little bit.
Well, you got to love yourself.
Love yourself. I'm going to love myself right now.
Get you some good eating. All right, family.